that when I say I'm doing carnivore, and that means eliminate carbohydrates, that's the first thing is I can't imagine life without bread.
Jelly, how did you find carnivore?
You know what? That's a funny thing. I think when I look back on it, I would say my statement is I was predestined for carnivore. I just didn't know it. um, from like a child, being a tiny child, I would have always said if I had my choice, I would eat meat and only meat. If that was my like choice. And but of course, in that world, I'm the last of the boomers, so there was that um, balanced meal and the triad pyramid, right? The food pyramid. And my mom tried to go along with that for a long time. Um, and and so at some point I got that like pounded in my head that that's the way it's supposed to be. Then I think what happened to me is as my family was kind of dysfunctional. Like both my parents were drinkers, and so um, but I had that. But I had to eat my vegetables. Like if we were all sitting at the table, I would have to eat my vegetables. So my parents would sit there and drink while I refused to eat my vegetables. and and back then, we're talking about the 60s and 70s, like, and everybody smoked. And so I could just like watch the oxygen level come down at the same time that I'm like refusing to eat my vegetables. And at some point, I felt like I'm just going to puke. So somehow or another, I managed to get him down, but it was never paired with anything pleasant. So then at some point, we all got so busy that then like carbs and processed food came into it. So um, I was super athletic. It doesn't look like it now, but but I was super athletic. Let's see, I'd always played soccer. I'd always played. Then there was a marching band in high school. That was a big deal in the States. But at about 14, I started playing a sport like racquetball. For the world that doesn't know that, that's like squash in a four walled thing, but without the tin, a little bit bigger with like cut off tennis rackets and a naked tennis ball. I mean, that's a serve of 160, 180 miles an hour, and I was playing at the age of already at the age of 16 and 17. I was already playing for money on weekends. I was already a professional, so what that was the age of carbo loading for anything sport related. And so my mother would make this vat of like spaghetti for the weekend, right? Of course, it had to be some protein, so it was meat sauce. And between my dad and I, we would polish off this huge vat of spaghetti for the weekend. Breakfast, lunch, dinner. And that's kind of what I learned to eat. So I was probably already at a very young age a carbohydrate addict. I love to do ice cream already. Like the greatest family times that we had were getting in the car and going to the ice cream shop. Like we could do that well. And that was a great hour and a half in the day. um, or like Thanksgiving dinner. And we could get our dysfunctional family together for specific we could behave well for specific occasions. um, and but for that reason, I just learned food is comfort, and so I went on that way for a long time. It always food was just either comfort or fuel, and then there was a then there was a point where I had ended racquetball and went through. Actually, drank for quite a while. There were very similar. I drank hard, really hard. Um, And then I found cycling, and I rode like Tour de France kind of cycling. I was what they probably in the second league, like the rest of the world would call it like the second league in cycling, which in America means all it does is the hobby pays for itself. But I rode with all the pros that raced in Europe. I rode with them, but I just kind of watched as their butts got smaller as they rode away from me. So, um, but that was the same thing, like carbo loading, um, bananas, uh, sugar drinks, all the stuff that we know is silliness now, especially as carnivores. But I was full in it, and I think back how much better could I have performed? Could I have made it the next step? Who knows? Um, so, and that's kind of where I was. I just lived that life and lived that life for a long time. I moved to Europe. I got married to a German lady in 2003. Moved to Europe. I'm a Christian. I moved here for the reasons of my faith. But but I mean, Germany has awesome bakeries, beer and bakeries, right? And I'm not a big beer drinker, but the bakeries are amazing, and bread is like an idol here. It's when I talk to people about carnivore, that's the first thing they say is I can't imagine my life without bread. And I thought about that for like a long time. I was definitely fresh German bread is stinking amazing. Really, when it's warm, it's best. Um, but I here it's always been up and down, up and down. I get into my 40s, into my 50s, your metabolism starts to slow down. Now I know about metabolic health, and I know what I was doing to myself. But basically, their only exercise was the cure for my weight. And so then I found another goal, the Cologne Marathon in 2010. And there I got down to probably under 7% body fat. And I mean, that was my race weight. I was underneath it. I was underneath 7%, of course, because every gram you have to carry up the side of a mountain. Um, and but within 2010, within about 5 years, I ballooned up to over 100 kilos again. And at some point, I reached my max about 2 years ago of 133 kilos. And yeah, I was a big boy. Yeah, I always kind of felt bad about my weight. It really, I was ashamed of myself because of my weight because I know what I'm capable of. I've had weekends where like your training peaks at just the right time. I know what it's like when your body does whatever you request of it without delay and without complaining. I know how good it can be. And so when I stand up and go, just from standing up or going up the stairs, then I feel completely embarrassed and ashamed. So
That must have been pretty uncomfortable because that's almost 300 pounds.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah, and I was
Wow.
right before that. I had been I was my job for a long period of time for about 10 years here in Europe I was a flight attendant for a major bargain airline. And so those aisles are very narrow, and those seat belts are meant for appropriately weighted people. And so it took a little effort to get that thing closed sometimes. um, so it was, yeah, just a lot of shame. And then Corona hit. They used that as an excuse to close my airline, and then I was just bored. I just didn't know what to do with myself. There's also a lot of emotional pain. Like I lost my dad in 21, and a couple months later, we got hit with a natural disaster, like a flood, like they call it a century flood. Like I mean, we had a meter 75 of water in our basement. I mean, it was up to here in our basement. We lost almost everything in our basement, and it just really knocked me down. But here I was, always so heavy, and I just couldn't. I didn't feel any power to do it, to do anything about it. But when I knew I needed to, so I found keto. Um, Started with Dr. Berg. Had some success with that, and when I could be disciplined and stay on it, I had great success and felt awesome. I can understand the people that love keto. What I came to understand in December of 23 is that, and that keto couldn't do anything for this, is that I'm just a sugar and carb addict. Hardcore. Yeah, and like if one a little sweet in my mouth or a little carbohydrate in my mouth, and I'm just done. I'm just delivered. I just and so a bag of noodles. That's a one serving bag, right? This 500-gram bag, preferably with butter and salt and like fat and carbohydrates. Or 100-gram bar of chocolate. That's a one serving size, obviously, right? So and what I found is that keto allowed this certain amount of carbohydrates, and then there's all these really cool snacks that it was always this fight to stay disciplined and hold to that. Like the carbohydrate addict in me was just screaming for more of it. And I do it, I lose some weight. For instance, for the height at my maximum, the 133 last year, I did keto, and I got down to I lost 16 kilos before we went to Japan. I talked about it in my interview with you for a baseball tour. I felt awesome, but as soon as I got back, well, it actually started while I was there with all the ramen noodles. God, are they good? Um, 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 I ballooned up so quickly again, and I've just come to admit that I just there's no moderation in me. I'm black or white. I know that in a lot of ways, but I didn't know it was also with food. So for me, carnivore was the perfect solution because all those things that are my temptation are completely eliminated and it's appropriate. So when I ran into Dr. Barry doing videos about carnivore, and he was saying, "Hey, people, this is perfectly healthy," I went, "I knew it." As I was a kid, I knew it already. No, and then I was convinced, and then I said, "Okay, I'm doing carnivore." And that was a little bit before Christmas, but I call my first day January 1st to make it easy. So just over 2 months now, I'm down 16 kilos in 2 months. I feel awesome. Um, and so, yeah, I love the science of it. I love Dr. Chaffee, the hardcore science. I love Dr. Barry, um, Dr. Seafried. Like I have people around me who are suffering with cancer, and I'm going like, I have an answer for you, and I'm just I just pray that they'd be open to it. And some are, some aren't. So yeah, so that's how I got here. And now I know I found the solution for my life, and I'm super happy about having found it.
That's awesome. Like 35 pounds in 2 months. That's great.
That's a good start. I was hoping for more.
Yeah.
That's a good start. I mean, I take my measurements. In total centimeters, both months I've had 24 centimeters off. If you add all the centimeters that you've taken off from all of the spots, It's over. No, wait a minute. I'm sorry, that I didn't add them up. That was 1 month. So it's like around 50 centimeters for both months together. So I feel really super encouraged and think everybody needs to do it, but you're not going to get everybody to do it.
So, like, on top of the weight loss, have you noticed any other changes in the 2 months?
I'm definitely sleeping better. My wife says I don't snore as much. If I'm not stupid and drink a bunch at night in the evening, yeah, I mean, this bottle goes with me everywhere. My goal is to drink 1.5 to 2 of these a day. So if I'm stupid and drinking too much in the evening, then I have to get up at night. But I'm at this point now where most nights I sleep through. And to be honest, there were times when I was in the middle of my carbohydrate addiction where I was getting up 3 and 4 times a night to go to the bathroom. Oh yeah, I was not good. So that is amazing. A lot of like especially knee pain. I had some knee pain, and that's gone. Um, I feel I struggled with dry eyes for a long time. That is like completely that's gone. You know, between all the carbohydrate addiction and then so much time in an airplane where the air was so dry, I had a major problem with dry eyes. I used to eye drops multiple times a day. Um, I feel like my hair is getting thicker again, but it's only been a couple months, but I'm looking forward to that. I think probably the thing I'm loving the most is when my family hugs me and they go, "Look, I can get both my arms around you," or "There's less of you every time," or "Yeah, that I'm gonna be out of clothes pretty soon." You know, I had kept the 2 sizes below me, thinking maybe I'm going to get to that, and those are already starting to get loose. So yeah. So those, I mean, physical effects, that's most of it. I think I have like a lot of pain gone. Oh, you know what? Wait a minute. This is super cool. What I do is every at the end of the first month, the end of January, then again now at the end of February, I wrote down all my measurements, and we have one of those portable blood pressure devices. So, and my blood pressure in December was high. I was like 154 over 110 or something like that. And like really high. Like I probably should have gone to the doctor, but I'm going like, no, I'm going to do this. I'm kind of stubborn too. And I measured yesterday, and it was 118 over 89. So in 2 months, that's pretty stinking incredible, actually.
Nice. And have you ever been on any meds like things like statins or diabetes stuff or anything like that?
I take that back. I had a major checkup like in September, and my thyroid, what is that, T2, right, or something like that, was a little low. He said it's in the parameters, but it's a little low, and he just said, you know what? If your goal is to lose weight anyway, why don't we just jack it some? And he gave me a real low dosage of L-Torox or something. So just a uh, a thyroid medicine to kind of just jack it up a little bit. So that may be a part of my losing weight, is that maybe I'm a little hyperthyroid, or at least at the higher level now than I was. But that's really it. I mean, I've had lots of times I've been depressed. I've been on depression meds in the past. But I feel like my mood is getting more stable. I think about you talking about you feel like you can be more objective. Um, yeah, I understand that. I understand that thought. I think it's a combination of things. I think there is an aspect of those of us who are little in the carnivore world where we're all kind of a little rebellious. Um, and um, and so I think that at some point, like a little stoicism like slips into all of us. I mean, like, hey, wait a minute, rational, blah, stay rational. I think because we know we need to get the information to defend ourselves, and at least that's in many cases. That's definitely the case for me. I feel like I want to know all the details so that when people ask me, I can hold a rational conversation, not look like a vegan, like a religious idiot. Um, and to actually be able to maybe lay out some facts. Um, I feel like in my marriage, I'm not as quick to get hurt
Mm.
in our conversations. It's easier for me to stay in conversations that would have been more difficult for me in the past. You understand. You probably understand me like very few others. That international relationships are not the easiest.
Yeah, there's a lot of cultural tightrope walking.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Um, and even after, I mean, we're at 21 years now, coming up on 21 years, but there's still like almost daily things that are just still present themselves as a um, as stumbling blocks for us. And so, but I feel like I'm able to be more stable. I can catch myself before I snap, um, and just be more selfless in the relationship. So uh, maybe it's the because I'm not so emotional, like hormonally like driven.
Yeah. Mm. Could be, I mean, I'm just imagining different things and relating it to my situation. It could be,
Yeah,
not being as sensitive as you were about things, or being able to just step back and look at the whole picture, or yeah.
I mean, I feel a lot of shame falling off me too. I mean, how many times in those kind of conversations, your wife says something to you and you take it immediately as criticism because you already are doing nothing but criticizing yourself to begin with.
Yeah. So speaking of family,
Yeah.
um, how do they feel about this? I mean, they must be somewhat happy, right? Because they're coming up to you and saying, "I can get my arms around you now," or "There's less of you all the time." So how have they been with you just eating meat and eggs throughout the day?
Um, Absolute support. My wife can even understand the science of it. She buys into most of it. She's gonna wait and see long term how much she really buys into it, but um, if there's going to be any long term effects of it, she's slightly worried about that. Um, but I'd have to say, my family is unfortunately paying for what we grew up with and what we did with them. Like, um, like my wife being German, like is also one of the ones that says, "I just can't imagine life without bread." She is one that probably, if you'd leave her to herself, if she hadn't married me, she probably like 90% vegetarian just from her own taste, from her, yeah, and her own appetite, what she prefers. And she already eats more meat than she ever would have being married to me. Um, so um, she's like totally supports it. Has these times where she thinks she could possibly do it, but it's not that far. Um, and my son really loves the idea, but he's an absolute carb and sugar addict. I mean, our fault. And and he did it with me for about a week and a half, and he couldn't believe how well he felt. But then there came the opportunity where he was going to hang out with his friends. Yeah, and then it's a movie night or a soccer game, and none of that works at all without chips and Coke and beer. And like socially, he's going to have to get to the point where I think he just is, he can't sit in a social situation without doing that yet.
Yeah. I think the good thing is though, he at least knows that it works.
Yeah.
So if he ever gets to a point where he thinks, okay, well, I need to do something about, my weight or my health or whatever, he knows, well, that worked for dad and it worked for me when I did it for a week or so. So
Yeah.
I'm going to give that a go again.
Yeah. I'm a little like I referred to earlier. I think as an athlete, I wish I would have had this information back then. How much better could I have been? And my son is baseball player, and I coach him, and he is like super good. Our club is amazing for German conditions, and I just think how good could he be? But he's not to the point where he's he has a drive to be good to the point where he's willing to give up the fun of the eating yet, which is just unfortunate. I look at it. Boy, I wish I had these advantages when I was his age. Um, but he already has so many advantages. When I look back, my wife and I, we've part of our walk of faith is that our life is 1,000 times more sane, as difficult as that it is, as my life was. As with my parents. My parents were awesome, don't get me wrong, but it was dysfunctional. We are also dysfunctional, but not that dysfunctional. You can't walk out of that kind of a situation and be 100%. So, but we're getting better every day, and the kids are grateful. So, yeah,
Nice.
I just wish, man, I wish he'd get it, and then he'd be tearing it up, But he's still doing good.
Mm. So how are you eating day to day? How many times do you eat and what's it made up of?
Um, I am. I've been the last 2 weeks. I've been lax, but what works for me and what I'm going back to is, it's definitely OMAD. Um, one time a day until it tastes terrible. Um, with predominance of fat. And then I'm doing a 42 to 46 hour fast from Sunday afternoon through whenever I eat Tuesday afternoon. And I feel stinking amazing doing that. I need to get I the other thing is I got a little taken in by cheese at the end of last month. Um Boy, Morphase is just insane. That's just like crack and cheese. Oh my god. And sometimes I've fallen back on that one time now. And so that's another one of those things. No moderation. I just need to eliminate it as a possibility for me. I get direct bloating and my discipline just disappears when I do cheese. So, but I do best on a 42, 46 hour fast from Sunday to Tuesday, and then OMAD the rest of the week. So, and
And
I just feel stinking amazing on that. I'm a huge Dr. Boz fan.
Mm.
And I just love this because she's also sciencey, right? And so and so I just love that, and that's her method, and she has huge success with it. I, to this point, have always had success with it, so that's the way I choose to live, and it feels awesome.
Yeah. So that one meal a day, you said it's mostly fat. So you mean like a fatty steak or
Yeah, that's good. I didn't answer that part of the question. I'm sorry. As a beef here in Europe, I mean, here we have the attack on meat badly, and steak is insane. Steak is,
prices?
yeah, yeah. You know, like 500-600 gram ribeye. Well, let me take that back. Okay, you get a package with a little tiny ribeye in it for like €5. But if you break that down, it's 26, 27, 28 euros a kilo. That's like, I mean, yeah, that gets a little expensive to do every day. Because one of these little ribeyes is not enough for me. Two of those is good. Um, what I do a lot of is beef, uh, ground beef. Love to do that. Um, love like chicken legs and thighs. Of course, pork belly is, my kids love that. I love that too. What I've discovered this week, and I finally learned how to cook it, is like a roast, like a pot roast or a pork roast. Um, you can get those super fatty, and yeah, I just leave them in the oven super low and just let them just cook for 5, 6, 7 hours, and they are, wow. Um, and in terms of like what I cook in, it's almost 99% it's butter. Or what I like to do is when I cook these chicken legs or a roast is I save all the juices and then I cook in that. So you have the seasonings from the previous, yeah, and that is just amazing. So um, I tried something this weekend. This might gross some people out. I eat my steaks like moo, like like rare, and my Saturday was like super busy. Like I didn't have a second to cook, and so we had some little cubes, like goulash cubes, beef. I just took them with me, and in the car, I just ate them just kind of raw. They were amazing. That's the best tasting thing I've had in a really long time. Is these little cubes.
I'm interested, like, how did you feel after reading that? Because I've heard a lot of people say when they have it raw, it's like the best feeling.
You mean like the energy feel kind of feeling, or
Energy or like just like feeling like you've been reinvigorated or something. That's the impression I get from people.
you know what? There were, I would say, there are two feelings. One is I felt physically amazing. Yeah, I felt like it may be a little different when I get closer to my goal weight. I mean that's 30 kilos away yet, but but I was going to meet with some friends and we are going to have kind of a deeper conversation, and I was super alert and hyper present. I mean, like cognitively, that was like a level I haven't been at in a very long time. Um, so yeah, I hadn't really put all that together. You're correct, actually. Um, the other part is, and I don't know if this is an ego thing or just a carnivore thing. I have no idea. But I gotta be honest, I kind of felt like a man. You know what I mean? Yeah, I kind of felt like You know what? I mean, we're carnivores. This is why do we even cook? I mean, of course, that's super over exaggerated, but I kind of felt like, why not?
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I haven't spoken to many people that have done it, but everyone I have spoken to that's done it has said it's just a different feeling after you eat it. Um, so as you talked about in Germany, there's a bit of an attack on meat.
Yeah.
Um, so how is the situation in Germany as far as things like diabetes, obesity, stuff like that?
Well, I mean, it's diabetes is huge. I wouldn't say that in terms of like obesity, it's as bad as America yet, but it's getting there quickly. Um, I mean, the Germans tend to be very, when it comes to food, very religious anyway. But the whole bread thing is just, and that's twice a day. Like they'll have a bread in the morning, some sort of little sandwich. I mean, they don't make sandwiches like the world, like much of the world does. They just take one piece of bread, and but they'll put honey on it, and they'll put cheese on it, and butter, and it's a poison sandwich. I mean, it's
Honey on bread. I guess kids do that. Yeah.
Germans do it too.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
um, they'll put some sort of a luncheon meat on it, some sort of ham or something like that on it. But mostly they love cheeses and honey and butter, or like spreads, like vegetarian spreads. They really like too. So and that again for dinner. I mean, in the evening, right? The way they do it here often is they have a breakfast, and then like when they get home from work, 3:30 or something like that. That's when they'll have their warm meal of the day, and then 6, 7 they'll have. They even call it evening bread, directly translated.
Interesting. Uh,
And so you see that this thing of I can't imagine life without bread is an answer to almost everybody that when I say I'm doing carnivore, and that means eliminate carbohydrates, that's the first thing is I can't imagine life without bread.
mm. So people don't look at you like you're crazy, but it's just like their reaction is, well, I couldn't do it because I can't give up the bread.
I mean, yeah, it's really interesting if like Germans and with their opinions are not very free. You know this one for sure. That they're not going to tell you what their opinion is unless you ask it, and then they're going to be brutal. So um, so if you ask them, if you tell them what's going on, they'll go, okay, yeah, I've heard of that, and then they'll just drop it. Like, and then like, okay, they think you're insane. Um, um, if they're like rabid religious kind of vegetarians or vegans, then of course they go, well, that can't be healthy in any way, shape, or form. And you go, actually, there's nothing more healthy. And then the argument's on.
That's like you've just picked up the baseball bat then, right? Oh. So, um, you've only been doing this, it's been 2 months. You've had good
Yeah,
success, but it's been 2 months. So
yeah,
your memory of getting started is pretty good.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
what would you recommend to someone who's wanting to get started, but they just don't know what to do? What advice would you give them?
You know, for me, the thing that has made it possible is the understanding of from where I've come. And that is at this point still pretty constantly present, that I don't want to go back to being powerless over food. That is super powerful for me too. Like, you've been doing this longer, that may kind of like wane across time. I hope it doesn't for me, but that is a daily present thing for me, is I do not want to be a victim of food again. And then on top, and then I would say then the next thing for me is I think I think moderation is kind of also just a sign of your addiction, if I can say that. I know that's kind of a hardcore position, but my feeling, of course, as an addict, my feeling with all these keto snacks and all this fancy cooking of carnivore stuff that looks like the way you used to eat is it's just a way to enjoy the addictive foods still. I know that's like super hardcore position, but this maybe just from where I'm coming from. It's like I just did a video the other day where I got thinking about what is food for. When did we start? When did we decide that food was for fun? I what the Industrial
Well,
Revolution?
I mean that's part of the problem, because it's become fun rather than just you know a supply of energy or a supply of nutrition. Then that's why people can't give it up.
And that's where that's the point I've decided that I'm just going to stay at is I'm just going to be I'm going to have a position of food being utilitarian. It's just it's fuel, and it's the healthiest way to do it. When I talk to people and say, yeah, but don't you need to have a balanced diet? My answer is, what can be more balanced than fat and protein from which I can produce everything I need without having anything that damages me? What could be more balanced than that? And that's just kind of where I've come to. I'm just going like, why?
Actually, that's a good answer to a balanced question, So, like, my answer would have been, well, why does it need to be balanced? What does that give us? But then when you think about it,
you're just posing the same question that I put as a fact. I mean,
yeah, but yeah, it's probably more effective to say it the way you've said it, which is, what could be more balanced than getting all the nutrition you need?
I mean, why would if I have everything I need, then why would I take the risk of introducing something that is inflammatory?
So, yeah, for someone that's new, then you would recommend just rip the Band-Aid off, get straight into it, and just try and kind of re-educate yourself that it's fuel, it's not fun.
I just don't want to be ruled by food.
Mm.
I don't want to be a victim of big food.
Yeah. Both actually, those two sentences are good things to remember. I don't want to be ruled by food, and I don't want to be a victim of big food. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
both the really nice statements. Yeah. So, Charlie, how can people find you online?
YouTube at Transformation Charlie, and also on Facebook, at Transformation Charlie 1, I believe. I have a fledgling channel where I'm kind of doing fun stuff for myself. I'm trying to start some interviews. I think that's a really cool medium to learn. And also, I'm just kind of sharing my thoughts to it. You know, I had some times where I just kind of ramble a little bit, like this idea of the other day where, hey, what the heck is food for? Why are we doing it? And so I just kind of share I just wax philosophical for a few minutes. Yeah,
No,
that's a
nice,
great best place to find me.
nice. Well, I'll link to those in the description.
That'd be awesome.
Charlie, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story with us. I really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. I really love serving the community. We got to get this message out there. So the world needs it. They just don't know it yet.